ask Fall River Fire Department firefighter Mike Aruda to step forward. Fall River Fire Department retired, that is, to step forward to explain the striking of the 4-5s.
The striking of the 4-5s. The fire service is rich with ceremonial customs and traditions. Our customs of rendering final honors has its origin in the fire department of the city of New York, where many years ago, long before the advent of radios and pagers, fire alarms and daily announcements were dispatched from central headquarters to outlying firehouses by a system of bells and telegraphs. Each different type of alarm or announcement would have its own number and series of bell strikes. When a firefighter died in the line of duty or when some important official or personage died, headquarters would transmit 5 bell strikes repeated in 4 series, with a slight pause between each series, followed by the announcement. This was done as long as 1865 in the New York City Fire Department to inform the rank and file of the death of Abraham Lincoln. The custom has continued to the present day, and this form of rendering final honors to departed comrades is known in the fire service as the striking of the 4-5s. Strike the 4-5s, strike the 4-5s.
Thank you, Mike. Can you all please join Richard Raposa in the singing of the national anthem?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red-glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much, Rachel. That was beautiful. Next, Father Mike Racine will deliver the invocation.
Thank you for your presence here this morning to our firefighters, our police officers, and our young people from our schools. Good to see you here as well. And we gather on this sacred day as we commemorate this 23rd anniversary, the 9/11 attacks on our country. We recall that beautiful morning that turned tragic and deadly and painful in such a short time. 23 years later, we remember that day of pain and sorrow, and the words that echo so often, we never forget. We remember all of the heroes of that day, the firefighters and first responders who demonstrated without fear the trembling act of courage during crisis. We remember the innocents who perished, friends and family and neighbors, and thousands of names that are read this day. We particularly remember on this day victim 001, Father Michael Judge, the chaplain of the New York City Fire Department, the first certified fatality. 23 years later, we gather to remember, to comfort and to reflect, and to be a people of hope. During these days that follow, we continue to pray for peace, to be the beacons of light, just as those rays of light that shine in New York tonight. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our country, our common values of freedom, justice, and peace. Inspire our leaders of cities and our nation to act wisely, to always pursue, and to enact that peace by word and example. Bestow upon all today and every day your blessings, and may we live to see the words be converted into plowshares and nations not learn from war anymore. Continue to bless our firefighters, our EMTs, our police, our armed forces. Grant them safety each day. Amen.
Thank you, Father. Before we get into the slate of speakers this morning, I want to acknowledge all the help that we get every year to manage this ceremony. Rather than mention everyone individually, because I'm sure to forget someone, I do want to acknowledge and thank the public safety officials from Fall River and elsewhere that contribute to this ceremony year after year after year. It's a lot of work for everyone, and we surely appreciate it. We wouldn't be able to do it without them, and of course it's for them. But there is one person, and you can refer to your program booklet, which identifies hopefully everyone. We did forget one person who I wanted to acknowledge specifically, which would be Fall River firefighter Jeff Medeiros, who comes here every year on his own time to make repairs to the bronze plaques that are behind us, that are cast from bronze. They're painted with some sort of enamel that at this point, 23 years later, comes off once in a while. So we really appreciate his work in doing that. My name is Chris Nardi. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here, and we'll start with the slate of speakers. We'll start with Senator Rodrick.
Good morning, everyone. So great to see everyone. To my colleagues in government, Representative Paul Schmidt and Representative Alan Sylvia and City Councilor Linda Pereira, thank you all for joining me and joining us as we will never forget and we continue to remember those brave acts by our first responders 23 years ago. It was a beautiful day like this on September 11th, 2001. And I was actually outdoors helping a friend when I got a phone call from my son who said, "Dad, you're not going to believe what's happening. A plane hit the World Trade Center." And I, like most of us, spent what seemed like the remaining month, but certainly the remaining week, just glued to our television sets as we saw over and over again the brave, selfless actions of our first responders, of our police, of our fire, of our emergency personnel running into the horror and the terror while thousands of people were running away and fleeing the horror and terror. So I am honored to be here today joining our first responders and saying that I shall never forget, we shall never forget, Fall River shall never forget, and the United States of America shall never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Fall River Mayor Paul Coogan.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for giving us some time this morning for this very special memorial service. It was 23 years ago. I was a vice principal at Talbot Middle School at the time. And for some of us that have spent our life in public service, it will always be remembered as a special moment in time that we'll never forget. I look at these kids in the front row. They weren't even born then now. So as time passes on, the memory of this event may fade for some people, but for most of us, it won't. Between the firemen, the police, the medical personnel, the military people, and the 3,000 lives that were lost that day, it will be forever seared in our memory, and that's why we do ceremonies like this, so we don't forget. And Fall River has a very special place for people that make the ultimate sacrifice to honor, and we honor them on a day like this. Again, I appreciate everybody for coming out, and please keep the hearts and minds of the families of 9/11 in your prayers today. Thank you.
Fall River Fire Department Chief Jeffrey Bacon.
Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, members of the community, today we gather to reflect on the tragic events of September 11, 2001. As the chief of the Fall River Fire Department, I stand before you with a deep sense of respect and solemnity, despite not having been a firefighter on that fateful day. Like many of you, I remember 9/11 as the first "where were you when this happened" moment of my life. For me, the legacy of 9/11 lies in the continued bravery, sacrifice, and resilience that define the Fall River Fire Department and the city's public safety community. September 11th is etched into our collective memory, not only for the immense loss it brought, but also for the extraordinary acts of heroism that emerged. We remember the courageous firefighters, EMS providers, police officers, and emergency responders who rushed into danger, their selfless acts of valor, and the countless lives that were forever changed. Though I was not in uniform on September 11th, the principles that guide our work, commitment, courage, and compassion, are timeless. These values were exemplified by those who stood on the front lines that day and to continue to inspire us in our service. Today, we must also honor the memory of those who have been lost in the years following September 11th. Countless first responders have succumbed to illnesses, such as cancer and other health issues linked to their service on that day. Their courage and sacrifice remind us of the hidden battles many first responders face and inspire us to continue advancing our approach to health and wellness. Additionally, we remember those who have faced mental health challenges stemming from this tragedy. The bravery they show in seeking help and the resilience they demonstrate in confronting their struggles highlight the profound personal cost of public service. Their stories emphasize the importance of comprehensive support systems and the need for ongoing dialogue about mental health in our public safety communities. In the immediate aftermath of September 11th, I remember being awed by the overwhelming sense of community that emerged. Despite unimaginable tragedy, people came together. Neighbors reached out to one another, strangers became friends, and entire communities banded together to support those in need. This collective response was not just about practical support, it was a testament to our shared human connection and an expression of our common humanity. I witnessed an outpouring of generosity and compassion that transcended barriers and divisions. People donated blood, organized fundraisers, offered shelter, and volunteered their time. In the face of adversity, the barriers that often divide us, whether socioeconomic, racial, or ideological, seem to fade away. What emerged was a powerful reminder of our shared values and the strength we can find in unity. The sense of community that emerged should serve as a vital lesson for us today. In this time of division and challenge, we can look back at the resilience and solidarity of those days as a guide. We are reminded that our strength lies in not our individual achievements, but in the collective efforts and our ability to support one another. It's in these moments of shared purpose and mutual aid that we find our true strength as a society. Let the legacy of 9/11 be the lesson that unity is not just for times of crisis. It is something we can and should cultivate in our everyday lives. Building a stronger, more compassionate community requires an effort and commitment to connect with others, remembering that oftentimes the most meaningful connections are made with people who are different from us. It involves reaching out to those in need, standing up for what is right, and fostering understanding and empathy in our daily interactions. As we commemorate this day, let us renew our commitment to embracing the values of unity and compassion. Let us strive to create and nurture a community where we support one another, facing challenges together and celebrating our shared humanity. The lessons from September 11th remind us that even in our darkest hours, there is light found in our collective spirit and power in our unity. Today, as we reflect on the countless sacrifices made on 9/11, let us pledge to honor their memory through our actions. Let us commit to upholding the values of service and solidarity, ensuring that no one is left to face their struggles alone, and working to build a community where compassion and support are paramount. In closing, let us hold in our hearts the memory of those who have died, both on that fateful day and the years since. May we honor that legacy by continuing to work together, embracing unity and compassion, and dedicating ourselves to the principles that strengthen our community. Thank you.
Fall River Police Chief Paul Garvin.
Good morning. Today marks a solemn day in our nation's history, a day that changed us forever. It was a day of unimaginable loss, but also of remarkable unity. In the face of tragedy, we stood together, bound by our shared strength and resilience as Americans. In the days following the attacks, we saw something profound. Strangers helping strangers, communities opening their hearts to one another. People were gentler, kinder, united by a shared sense of humanity and purpose. It was a time when differences faded, and what mattered most was the love and care we showed for each other. As we remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, our brave first responders, innocent civilians, and all those who lost their lives, we honor them by living the values that emerged from that dark day. Let us be reminded that the spirit of unity and compassion is not just for times of crisis, but for every day. May we continue to be gentler and kinder, not just for ourselves, but as a living tribute to those who gave everything for the ideals that we hold dear as Americans. Their legacy calls on us to rise above the division and embrace the simple but powerful truth that we are stronger together. Thank you, and may we never forget.
Our guest speaker today is Colonel Jonathan Bott from the Naval War College. He is a professor there, as well as a United States Air Force 21-year-old, excuse me, are you 21 still?
Yeah, I hope so.
21-year U.S. Air Force veteran.
Chris, you're only as old as you feel, so I'm pretty close, 21. I want to say thank you very much for the host here at Battleship Cove for this memorial event. It's this event and continue to showcase what it takes to protect this nation and our worthwhile experiment in freedom that are ever so important. Ladies and gentlemen, 23 years ago today, almost exactly, terrorists killed 2,977 people from 90 nations. 2,753 people in New York, 184 in the Pentagon, and 40 on Flight 93 in Pennsylvania. The enduring legacy of that day impacted not just our nation, but the world. More importantly, it impacted individual people. And I don't just mean the lives that were lost that day, but lives permanently changed by the loss of loved ones, by the lost sense of security, by the lost innocence and sense of peace that seemed so common during the post-Cold War peace dividend. Pew Research found that 93% of adults over 30 can remember exactly where they were when those attacks happened. You've heard some examples up here today. As those flights were departing Logan Airport, I was on the other side of Boston as a senior ROTC cadet. And I remember standing in our detachment, watching as an aircraft hit the South Tower at 9:03. I remember rapidly seeking out other cadets to have them changed out of uniform because we didn't understand the extent of the planned attacks facing our nation. And I remember the words of our commander later that day when he told us that freedom invites challenge from evil men. And that challenge requires warriors to defend it. Words that stuck with me over the skies of Afghanistan and the Middle East and Africa many years later. But I also remember a friend and fellow EMT leaving the very next morning for New York to help search for and treat wounded in whatever way he can. I remember being surrounded by fellow Americans and others in Marsh Chapel, praying for peace and justice. But we don't remember and we don't honor evil on this day. But instead we honor the response to it. The brave passengers of Flight 93, who in protection of fellow Americans said, "Let's roll." The heroic firefighters who charged up the North and South Towers, knowing full well that it may be their last, in order to save as many as they can. The dedicated first responders who tirelessly searched for survivors and treated all those that they could. And the commitment of fellow Americans across our nation and the world that day to respond and rebuild better than we did before. We say never forget, but that means remembering both the loss and remembering what we can accomplish together as one nation under God. The recent events in Ukraine show us that no matter how utopian we want the world to be, there will always be bad actors out there willing to reign tyranny and oppression. And like the quote etched into the Jefferson Memorial, "I have sworn eternal hostility upon the altar of God against all forms of tyranny over the minds of men." We need Americans who will stand in the breach, shoulder to shoulder, against the next threat. Americans willing to make a difference in the competition of ideas, proving that this nation of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth, as Lincoln once said, but instead be proven an example worth following, an experiment in liberty worth pursuing. Whether with a knife in your teeth or a pen in your hand and everything in between, we need to work together in service to something greater than ourselves. We are challenged this day to think of ourselves in a greater context, perhaps as an American first, rather than falling into societal pressures to think of ourselves first, or as part of a smaller tribe, or associating only with a particular political party, or a particular organization, or a particular label. But instead, we are meant for so much more. The preamble to our Constitution reminds us of this. It says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States." When it says, in order to form a more perfect union, it does not state that that union is perfect now. It does not state that it was perfected when our nation was founded 248 years ago, nor have we perfected in those years since. That perfect union envisioned by our founding fathers is not here, and the work is far from done. It requires us to serve that purpose again today. You can serve the hope founded in the promise of America, the unfinished work of forming that more perfect union, and the hope of a better future. So you, right now, in whatever role that you find yourself in, whether as a first responder, an educator, a public servant, a researcher, an advocate, a volunteer in your community or religious organization, or a neighbor, you know the calling, and you know the impact that you can have. Serve something greater than yourself. Borrowing from the great preacher John Wesley, serve in every way you can, everywhere you can, to everyone you can, for as long as you can. For that's what our perfect union requires, and what our communities need. On that fateful day, 23 years ago, President Bush said that our fellow citizens, our way of life, and our very freedoms came under attack. He went on to remind us that a great people had been moved to defend a great nation. And many of you here today are those who stood in the breach, shoulder to shoulder with your fellow Americans, to say, never again and never forget. America was targeted because we were the brightest beacon of freedom and opportunity in the world. And I pray to God that that beacon is never extinguished, regardless of the evil in the fallen world around us. On that day, Americans from every walk of life united in our resolve for justice and peace. And as we remember them, may we remain united in those same pursuits today and every day. Thank you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Colonel. Before we continue, I just wanted a couple of acknowledgments I want to mention that I neglected to do earlier. Part of our delegation here, Representative Paul Schmidt and Representative Alan Sylvia, and also to my right, retired New Bedford Fire Chief Roger Nadeau, who I think it's probably the 5th year he's brought his engine here. And if you have a few moments after the ceremony, he'd be glad to interpret the memorial that's on the side locker there on the right hand, or the passenger side of the truck. Our last speaker will be, or for the time being, Father Rob Nekovich, from the chaplain of the Fall River Police Department.
Good morning. As we recall the horrific events of September 11th, 2001, remembering the 343 firefighters, 72 police officers, 8 EMT and paramedics, a part of the 2,977 innocent lives lost. I'd like to share with you a poetic reflection so that we will never forget the sacrifice of our first responders that day. Let the world always remember that faithful day in September, and the ones who answered duty's call should be remembered and honored by us all. Our paramedics, police, and firefighters, always there for the needs of others, left the comfort of their home to face perils yet unknown, an embodiment of goodness on a day when evil hearts had gone astray. They never questioned what they had to do, but rather ran into hell to save as many as they could, who by example were a source of hope and strength to others who could not cope. Heroes that would not turn their back, with determination that would not crack, who bound together in their ranks and asking not a word of thanks. First responders who bravely gave their lives, whose orphaned kids and widowed wives can proudly look back on their mom and dad who gave this country all they had. Actions taken without regret, heroism we shall never forget. To the ones who paid the ultimate price, let us never forget their sacrifice. Lord, as we honor their memory here, those who gave their life for all that we hold dear, may their memory never wane, so that their sacrifice will not be in vain.
I'd ask the representatives of public safety who choose to carry the wreath, please step forward. Thank you very much to Cassandra and the gun crew aboard the battleship. Honor Guard. And Cantor Richard Wahlberg for the benediction.
Where were you on 9/11? This question has become part of the fabric of our lives as Americans. What a tragically defining moment in history. There is nobody alive then who doesn't remember where he or she was between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. Though you were not on United Airlines Flight 175 out of Boston, and though you weren't on American Airlines Flight 77 that crashed into the Pentagon, and though most likely you weren't in the World Trade Center, you nevertheless will always feel a very strong connection to those poor, unfortunate souls. 23 years and a day ago, September 10th, we all felt secure. But our myth of security was shattered one day after, 23 years ago. Life plays tricks on us, and if we don't fight terrorism anywhere, we will find terrorism everywhere. Winston Churchill in 1948, quoting George Santayana, said, "Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it." We are living in perilous times and must do everything to prevent future catastrophes. I believe in the sun even when it is not shining. I believe in love even when feeling it not. I believe in good even when evil is all around. I believe in peace even when terrorism abounds. I believe in God even when God is silent. May the blessings of peace, decency, and humility infuse and embrace our beloved country and all the world. Eternal wellspring of peace, may we, as well as the enemy, be drenched with the longing for peace, that we all may give ourselves over to peace until the earth overflows with peace as living waters overflow the seas. May the blessings of compassion, understanding, and benevolence spread out and permeate the air we breathe. May it clasp to our bosom and unite our beloved and venerated country with the whole world, and let us never forget, united we stand, divided we fall. Amen.
Those lost in 9/11 and those that continue to make sure that no one else is lost to terrorism. Thank you. Thank you. They should die.
thank you to the two Bills for the doves and the rendition of Amazing Grace. This concludes our ceremony. I would ask the honor guard to retire the colors.